Right, yesterday we tried an Forbes article by I don't remember his name. But that was a very big disappointment, right? I'm trying to find actual arguments that can help me temper my views on universal basic income, because to me it's a super shiny idea and it's the solution to all the world's problems, and that kind of implies to me that I'm doing some mistakes when I'm thinking. So I want help with people who wants to argue against universal basic income. But the thing yesterday was a disappointment, because it was just kind of listing arguments for universal basic income and saying that these arguments are dumb. And I kinda agreed, right? There was just a lot of arguments that I would not make. That was in general what I felt about that thing. So now we're trying... Oh, this one doesn't... Oh, it's from Brittany Hunter in fee.org. Right, the top 3 arguments against a universal basic income. Unfortunately, a welfare state by any other name is still a welfare state. That's interesting. What is wrong with a welfare state? I guess we will learn. Right. Every so often, a new study is released concluding that a universal basic income is needed to fix the country's welfare system. I haven't seen these studies myself that concludes this. It kind of makes sense to me, but how can this study say this, right? As a knowledge? That seems weird. Alright. Most recently, the Roosevelt Institute claimed that switching to a UBI system could actually grow the economy by 2.5 trillion by the year 2025. I mean, that makes sense to me, right? Actually, I'm not even sure. I think this is moving too fast, right? Like, making that type of switch. It feels like the Roosevelt Institute study is kind of theoretical, right? It's just done with a mathematical model, right? We don't know what people would do, right? We don't know how a world in UBI would look, right? We don't know because we haven't had it. So this is just speculation. But the speculation makes sense to me, right? If we take the... we give people that don't have a lot of purchasing power, we give them access to more purchasing power. That in the long term, I don't know about 2025. Well, when was this written? 2017. Alright, so this was 4 years ago. So what, in like 7 years? So by 2030-ish? I don't know about that. Growing the economy? Like long term, yes. Short term, I'm not so sure. I think maybe a 7-year estimate? I don't know, maybe. Right. The study is full of hypothetical situations in which Americans receive a UBI of varying amounts. The research concludes that the higher the UBI, the more prosperous the economy. Yeah, right. More purchasing power. That maybe. That's a speculation. I don't know if I would make the conclusion, but it is part of the speculation. For me, this is not an argument for UBI though, right? I would say, like, even if the economy reduces by, I don't know if this is a big number, right? This doesn't mean anything to me, right? If we reduce the economy by 10% by the next 10 years, I would still argue for UBI. Right? Because a welfare state by any other name is still a welfare state, and I'm all for a welfare state. Right? The welfare of the people, that makes sense to me. What other point is it to have a society if not to help people feel well? Right. But like many UBI apologists, the study misses the major problems with just such a system. Nice. Here are the main three main ones. It's expensive. This is not an argument for me, right? This for me is an obstacle to overcome in regards to UBI. It's not an argument against it, like, at all. That's the same thing that the other title did, right? Saying that this is an argument against. Stuff that is hard to implement, right? It's not an argument to not do something just because it is difficult. It might be worthwhile. Wasn't it one of the US presidents who said we don't do it because it's easy, we do it because it's hard? Something like that. Alright, proponents claim that the UBI would be an efficient replacement for the country's bloated welfare apparatus, and so would actually reduce overall costs. It might, right? If we're talking about just the bureaucratic costs of the bloated welfare apparatus, if you just pay everyone, the bureaucratic and the administrative costs gets reduced because it's a very straightforward thing, right? You just pay everybody. And that can be automated, right? You don't have to have people to check on you and make sure that you are eligible and whatnot, right? You just have one system for everything. But of course, that, like, paying everybody, that is still way more money, right? And like I argued yesterday, right? A lot of that money comes from the wages that are being paid today. Not all of it, but yeah, it would probably be, yeah. Like I said yesterday as well, right? If you lower,
It's the deep
breaths.
Before the plunge.
I mean, this could be a 10% detriment for the economics of my country or any country for the next 20 years. I would still argue that UBI is a great idea. Yeah, great idea, still. Alright, unfortunately a welfare state by any other name, still a welfare state. Yep, and UBI just replacing one pricey system for another. So what's the argument against a welfare state then? Alright, and unlike the current welfare state, which has standards for determining who qualifies for certain aid, a UBI would be given to everyone. Yeah, exactly. That's the benefit. This would dramatically increase the pool of citizens receiving benefits from the state and inflict massive expenses across the board. Yeah, definitely, but what is the argument against a welfare state? It's kind of implied that a welfare state is a bad thing. I don't understand. What is the argument? Just because you say so doesn't work for me, no. Alright, the Roosevelt Institute study posits two different ways to fund the UBI. But neither would benefit the national economy or the taxpayer. Alright, the study's positive findings about an economic stimulation are only applicable if the program is funded by increasing the federal deficit. So basically, in order to grow our economy, we must first plunge the American people even further into debt. Alright. Into debt to whom? Who are you indebted to, the American people? I wonder. I'm Swedish, right? So for me, I wouldn't be plunged. Right? Universal basic income in Sweden would not plunge the Swedish people into. Right? No, the Swedish UBI would not plunge the American people into even further debt. But like I say, I would assume that there would be a hit on the economy, right? It would worsen the economy short-sightedly. I definitely think that is something that just makes sense to me. It would take time to balance it out and make the new system work. That just makes sense. Yeah. Right. The second scenario presented in the report was UBI funded through increased taxation. Exactly. In this instance, the study found that no net benefit to the overall national economy. In fact, the report even went too far to state when paying for the policy by increasing taxes on households rather than paying for the policy with debt. Wait, why are we taxing households? We're taxing companies, right? Actually, it's a separate issue, right? Increased taxes. Sure, you can tax households. Fine, I guess. Right. Rather than paying the policy with debt, the policy is not expansionary. In effect, it is giving the households with one hand what it's taken away with the other. There is no net effect. There is, though, right? It is the... right? Taxing households would be the income takers, right? So it's a Robin... like, if you do this, the taxes thing, it's a Robin Hood kind of deal, right? And it's taking from the households that can afford it and give it to the households, right? It gives to everybody, right? But the effect is to increase the purchasing power of the poorest, right? That is the positive effect. And just if we're just talking economics. And for me, the UBI is not about economics. It's not about improving the economics of the country. Actually, I kind of want to skip this thing as well, because I'm gonna be at odds with all these arguments, right? Right. There would be an effect, however, on the American taxpayer. When the Resolution Foundation, the think tank in the UK, crunched the numbers to see what the costs would be to the taxpayer, they found that the amount paid would actually be much more than the amount received. Much more? I mean, it... Alright, this is very vague, right? Who is this taxpayer you're talking about? Right, there would... yeah, and therefore it kind of don't make sense to... right, let's say me here, right? I have an income of $100, right? And UBI is, I don't know, $50, right? So I get 50, that's my total, right? I get $100 and then I pay $50 in, like I would have to pay $60 in tax to get $50 back. That doesn't make any sense, right? That the taxpayer should, like, that the money should get funded from that situation. It makes way more sense to have, like, a big clump sum of the thing is, right? That we lower all the wages with the UBI amount. Actually, yeah, we lower the wages with kind of the UBI amount, and that all that money goes into taxes instead. But right, that would still leave some other stuff to, so you would have to have still increased the taxes. I'm not an economist, so I just assume it's still just about moving money around and doing, because of course it is more expensive to have the system in place than the actual amount people receive. Of course, right? I'm saying we're reducing the bureaucratic costs, but the bureaucratic costs do not disappear. Right, commenting on the problems with the UBI as they are related specifically for the UK. Actually, I want to zoom in a little bit. Sorry about that. That's better. From the first pound you earned to the 43 pound, well, first you'd pay a combined rate of income tax and national insurance of around 35 to 40%, after which the higher... Right. This is just one way of funding. They're saying that, right? This text is just looking at one way of funding the thing, and saying it's a dumb way to fund it. And I would say yes, right? Putting this funding on the persons, on the people, is kind of weird. I would put it on the... yeah, it's like we already have, right? In Sweden, and I guess in other places as well, right? If you hire someone, you pay them a salary, but there is also social services costs, right? So it's more expensive to hire someone than just the wage that that person earns, right? There's a lot of additional costs above, right? And that's not the person you're taxing. It is the companies. All right. What this type of proposal really means is that a vast sum of people will be paying more in taxes than they already do. Yes, sure. I would, like, however you turn it around, it would lead to paying more taxes. Yeah. That would definitely be a consequence of UBI. Like, again, I'm not an economist, but that is my assumption, yeah. That, in general, the amount of taxes one pays would increase because of it is like there's a big sum of money that now moves through the government that did not before. And though that sum of money would be considered taxes, right? Equivalent of the entire budget of the... I mean, this is just a straw man, right? Let's say I have a job and I get $100 income for my job. Then we implement a UBI, and a UBI of $50, and suddenly I have $150 income every month. That is not what I'm arguing for, right? I'm arguing for that I have $100 income every month, and UBI becomes $50, which means tomorrow I get around $100 income still. It's just 50 comes from the UBI and 50 comes from my wage. That will increase taxation like a bunch, yes, but it's a straw man at putting it as an argument, right? Because that, like, arguing that I would have $150 per month, that is untenable, right? Yeah, this money has to come from somewhere. It will not appear out of thin air. I agree. And unfortunately, oh man, right? This is such a dumb idea, right? Anything that the government does, in the end, is the people who are paying for it, right? So this is not an argument against UBI. It's the same as yesterday. This is just an argument against taxation, right? Taxes in general, right? And if, like I said yesterday, right? If you're against taxes, then yeah, you're against taxes. Universal basic income, right? It feels like it's not really relevant. I guess, I suppose, right? If you're against taxes, then you would be against universal basic income. That makes sense. You're against universal healthcare. You're against, I guess, roads maintenance, and you're against military. You're against all the taxation things, right? That makes sense if you make an argument that taxes are bad, okay? Then all the stuff that the government does is bad from your perspective. Right? And I think that just being against taxes as a blanket statement, I think that is dumb, right? Because this person does not say, like, it would not do this argument against the military, for example. It's very Right? It's not a blanket statement. It's cherry picking when it's a problem and when it's not, right? You can be against taxes over here, but you can be for taxes over here, right? Right? If you're against taxes, then you're against the government as a blanket statement. And then anything the government does is terrible. So this falls flat to me completely, because not having a government, right, then we're having a completely different discussion. We're having a completely different discussion then, so it's not relevant in here, I would say, yeah. Incentives work, handouts don't. That's the same argument from yesterday. For me, I think one consequence of having a UBI is some people are just gonna stay home and play video games all day. And for me, that is fine. One thing that I want to see in the future is an automated society, right? Where a lot of the boring work is done by machines rather than people, right? Why should the boring work be done by people when it can be done by machines? And that implies to me that there will be a lot of unemployed people in the future. The one example being the self-driving cars, right? Everybody who works in traffic will be out of a job in the future. And some people are gonna say, oh, we gotta try and find them new jobs. And I'm like, no, why would we, right? Isn't part of being human is reducing the amount of menial labor to do, right? If we have a machine to do the thing for us, why the fuck would we want to do it? Or why would we want another person to do it? Right? So I don't want to incentivize. Well, I concede that there is work that has to be done by people. Right? I'm not taking that away. I'm just saying that a goal in my mind for humanity is reduce the amount of work that humans have to do. And then you still get a wage, right? We don't take the wage away. In my mind, UBI it's just enough, right? It's just enough. Food and shelter. That is enough. And then you can have a political game to increase and decrease it, right? But the absolute minimum is food and shelter. And then a lot of people, some people would argue politics for increasing it, right? So you get food and shelter and more stuff, right? More, what's that, amenities? I don't remember what it's called, but more quality of life stuff. When something comes easy, it is easily taken for granted. Yeah, that's an argument for, in my mind, right? Easy money? Yeah. It gives me an ethical strength, right? I can always, in this system, I can always feel safe to take whatever risks I want or ethical standpoints that I want, right? If I, for example, don't like the tobacco industry because of cancer or whatever, I don't think this applies to me, but it's like scummy business practices. I can just, as a worker, just say, I don't want to do these scummy business practices, and then I can quit. And it gives me liberty to do that. Today, the worker cannot. All right. Incentives are a powerful force, and there is no greater incentive than financial security, and holding a job is essential to that end, right? What this is saying, right? All right. The threat of not being financially secure, food and shelter, is very motivating. Yeah, it is. It's very motivating if you're afraid of starvation or being homeless. Those threats are very motivating. Do you want to live under that threat? Does that seem like a healthy and contentful and happy life? If that is your motivating factor in life, I don't want to starve, I don't want to sleep on the street. Does that sound like the best possible society that we can build? Or should we strive for something better? Right? And it's not, right? Sure, that's a super great incentive. I will still be incentivized to get one of these things and a new computer, right? And a new Steam Deck. Yeah. Right. And while it would be nice to believe otherwise, giving cash handouts to every American incentivizes them to try that much less. Wait, oh, right. Yeah. For me, this is an argument for UBI, not against. Right, by removing the financial incentive to work, that's not what... Right. I haven't heard that argument for UBI, removing the financial incentive to work. I would definitely not remove the financial incentive to work, yeah. I think that when you do work, you should get compensated for it, right? Claiming that UBI proponents argue anything else is a straw man. This is just bullshit. This is bullshit. I've never seen that argument, and if someone is making that argument, they are dumb, yeah. The state is encouraging idleness. Which I could get behind that, yeah. This doesn't follow though, right? The state is encouraging idleness, which I'm all for, yeah. I would say this is just dumb, but yes, we are encouraging idleness. And I think that is fine to encourage idleness. Yeah. I've spent a lot of time being idle. And I think it's good for the mental health. Figure out, what do I want to do next? Maybe I need to rest up for a month. I don't know. Something contrary to the entrepreneurial spirit so deeply woven throughout our country's history. Alright, yeah. One could argue, right? If the entrepreneurial spirit is so deeply woven throughout our country's history, right? If it's such a big part of the culture, doesn't this idleness, this freedom of the individual who gets UBI, that safety net, doesn't that give them free time to follow their entrepreneurial spirit? Right. This seems like a lie. Yeah, it feels like this is a lie, right? If this was the case, if there was an entrepreneurial spirit deeply woven throughout the country's history and culture, right? If that is a thing that happens, then something that would follow from all this freedom would people using this free time not to be idle, but to be entrepreneurial. So, right, this just falls flat. Alright, during the Clinton era, the welfare state saw tremendous decreases, but that didn't mean that there were millions of Americans struggling to get by. Employment actually increases because... Right. Employment increases. Right. This here, from my eyes, is something bad in society. Increased employment? No, I want to decrease employment. Right, the welfare state isn't going anywhere. Right, adopting a UBI would increase the state's power rather than decrease it. Yes, it would increase the state's power. It would also increase the people's power. It would decrease the company's power, the private sector, yeah. And I'm all for that, yeah. It feels like this is dumb again. Well, it's not dumb, it's just I completely reject them as arguments. Right, as previously mentioned, there are always claims that a UBI could decrease, reform, or even abolish our welfare system. Replace. And that would be the goal. The goal would be to replace the other things. But no one seems to have any idea how this transitions would actually look. Alright, my mind. Right, I'm not an economist, but right, in my mind, right, if we would want to implement UBI, it would be in steps. That's how I imagine it, right? I haven't thought this through like a lot, but right, I have an idea, right? That's just an idea. And my idea is that first we would replace the pensions, right? When you're above a certain age, you don't work anymore, right? That's how it works in my country. I guess that is how it works in America as well, right? You get a pension. That is kind of a UBI already, right? So we just start implementing that everybody above a certain age gets this money. And then I would go everybody below a certain age, right? Let's say, I don't know when you would start getting UBI. Should you get that from year 1? Give it to the parents? I don't know, right? But let's say, just for the sake of not changing the responsibility for children here, let's take young adults, right? From 18 years of age until maybe, how many years does it take to study? 5 years? 18 to 23, 18 to 25. And we start giving kids in that, right? We start giving them UBI. Stuff like that, right? And then just change the ages. Lower from the top. Actually, maybe just lower from the top. That would be easier. Yeah, that's actually easier. Like, then you go, like, we start doing that, and then the next year we lower the age restriction with 1 year, and then next year another year, like, and we can do it like something like that, right? Call it pension, but people just go starting taking pensions earlier and earlier and earlier. That would be one way to implement it, right? Because it's gonna be destabilizing to make this. This is a big fucking change in how we make society, right? So since it's gonna be destabilizing, take it slow, implement it slow and steady, notice all the problems, because there will be problems, the unforeseen problems, right? And give yourself ample opportunity to deal with those problems. That's one way to do it, right? Right, this is because there is no transitory plan in place. Yeah, there is none, right? We're not there yet. But that would be one way. And any such plan that came to fruition would surely be political suicides. Alright, it's the same dumb argument as before, right? Oh man, the same argument as yesterday. It's like, oh, this would have political opponents, and because it would have political opponents, we should not do it. That is the dumbest argument for anything. Every political stuff the government does has political opponents. That's how politics work. That is the reason why we have politics in the first place. Because people don't fucking agree to anything. That is not an argument not to do anything. That's an argument for not doing anything whatsoever. Right, so this kind of feel like this text is just the same as the other one. They don't want a government. That's it. They don't want a government. And that's all the arguments. Ah, so disappointed. So disappointed. What time is it? Alright, I probably have time to do this again. How much do you want to bet this is just the same thing again by Oren Cass? Why universal basic income is a terrible idea? I just want to skim through this. Listen to the article? No, alright. Alright, we've heard about it. Columnist, intrigue, data journalists, explainers. Enthused? Yeah, I'm an enthusiast. Technologists, certain that their breakthroughs in artificial intelligence and robotics will leave everyone else employed. Not everyone else, but a lot of people will be unemployed, right? And that's a goal, right? It's not that we believe that it will happen. It's a goal. We want to see it happen. UBI is critical to the utopian future. No. Just the future. Potential future. This is a wish, right? Some are even funding a pilot program, but others think the time has arrived. Yeah, Finland and Canada are experimenting with UBIs. It's great. Held a national referendum in creating one. The problem with these studies, right? They are looking at the benefit for society from a top-down perspective, right? And the economy, the benefits for the economy. That is not where I come from. That is not why I am excited about UBI. And I don't think that is the root cause why people are excited. I think it is because of the liberty of the people. That is why it's exciting, right? It's not that it's making... And by that very nature, it is making society better. Because it's making the life for the people better. It's not making the top-down economical structures better. It might not, right? But just narrowing in and just looking at that as arguments against it, I reject that. Like I did it in the previous one, yeah. We do have a choice. America has no choice. I've seen that argument, right? That it's, right, if automation continues, it is some form of UBI is in the future, right? It's gonna happen sooner or later, as long as civilization keeps progressing in the current route, right, with the automation, then there has to be something like this. Or we just create all the pointless jobs that we already see on the rise, right? So many pointless jobs that just doesn't really contribute anything. It just helps the economy out. It doesn't improve the lives of anyone. It just helps out the economy. Right? And you need to divorce, right? Economy, money, is a tool that we use to organize ourselves into a societal structure, right? If that tool is not making our life better, then it is time to change how the tool works, right? Improve upon how the tool works. Don't take it away like the communists want, right? They want to just remove money altogether, and that's just, it's not impressive, because how would that look? I have no fucking idea. Instead, improve the current system, make it better, make it work for the people that are actually are the ones that create society, right? Without the people, right, the systems themselves are not a society. It's about the people. Yeah. And all these arguments are about the structures, right? Saying that the current structure, right? We can keep the current structure working. We can keep society working as it is working today. It's no problem. That is not the motivation. All right. Universal basic income is a logical successor to the worst public policies and social movements of the past 50 years. All right, sure. That's an opinion that I might agree with, might disagree with. All right. In The Dream and the Nightmare, his masterly account of the social currents that produced the entrenched poverty of the underclass. All right. When it behooves mainstream culture to assert traditional mainstream values with conviction, the haves refuse to assert to the poor and the black the most fundamental of those values, the worth of the respectable working life, however humble. Right. Yeah, these are people that just value money more than people. Right? They value this abstract system, and I just don't. I can't get behind any of these arguments, I don't think. Right, clearly defined responsibilities, from educating children to caring for the elderly to fighting wars, are fundamental to a society's character. Alright, so here we're doing authoritarian arguments, right? Authoritarian, right? Society should tell everybody exactly how they should live their lives. That's actually surprising that I hear Americans making this argument. Being this authoritarian. Right. They establish the terms of relationship, the scope and role of civil society, the expectations against which people judge one another, right? It's super authoritarian. That's very surprising that I find authoritarian arguments. Isn't liberty and freedom like super American? And few are as important or pervasive as the responsibility of providing for oneself, for one's family, and for future generations. Alright, so my counter to this. Why is that important? If it is possible to automating the providing food and shelter, right? If we have built enough shelter and we can automate the food production, so it can just be given to me and my family, food and shelter, it can just be given by society.
Just give me a fucking chance to breathe. I got a few questions of my own. You ain't dying, he is.
Why is this then important? Why is this responsibility important? Right? And also, this important thing, it's just an opinion I disagree with, right? This is not a universal truth. It's just an opinion from this, that we disagree on. And that is not an argument. It doesn't work, right? It only works if you agree to this. And I would argue this opinion. They are not arguing this opinion. They're just stating it as fact. Right? They're stating this opinion as fact, and it leaves no room for argumentation. I would want to argue this. Yeah. Argue these opinions that you have. They are not arguing those opinions, though. They just take them for truths, which is dumb. Right, over the past century, America has shifted some of that responsibility from family and community to government. Yep, the elderly and disabled are now receive regular cash payments and health coverage. Yes, I think this is great, yeah. For a time, single mother received cash support as well, though welfare reform significantly curtailed that assistance. Most low-income households can receive a variety of in-kind benefits such as food stamps, housing vouchers, and Medicaid. Exactly. All these things I would want to replace with... well, I don't have the similar stuff, but I would want to replace them all with UBI. Right. The government's assumption of such obligations has helped mitigate severe hardships, but it has also changed the economic incentives and cultural norms in a way that promote dependence over self-reliance. I read that paper about self-reliance. What was his name? Yeah, it's on YouTube if you want to see it. I have a whole, I think it's probably 10 hours just reading that essay about self-reliance and my opinions on that thing. Replace accountability with entitlement. Yeah, I think this is great. Entitlement. Don't we want people to be happy and have entitled lives? Great lives? Why wouldn't we want that? Why wouldn't we want the best for the people? What is the argument against this? Too far or not far enough, right? Yeah, not far enough. What is the argument against moving this direction? But through it all, even if diluted, a crucial principle has survived. If you are able to work, you should work. That I reject. I reject that. Authoritarianistic cultures, right? If you're able to work, you should work. I should tell you what to do. Right? That is work, literally. Someone else should tell you what to do. That is what we call work. The safety net ensures that no one starves, freezes, or dies on the hospital steps, but it does not typically offer a full substitute for employment. Yeah, I'm not arguing for a substitute to employment. For some people, yeah, I don't know, it's not a substitute sitting around on your ass playing video games and reading articles all day, but it's... If it makes me happy, then why not? Right. Even when the economic value of safety net benefits might approximate the earned income of a low-wage job, those benefits arrive with constraints on how they can be spent, and with the weakened but still potent stigma of welfare. Yeah, I don't like restraints. Constraints, yeah. Yet the more abortive than the stigma is the inverse praise. Those who work to provide for themselves and their family know that they are playing a critical and worthwhile role. Nope. This is right. This kind of implies that all work is good work for society. And I reject that idea. I did it yesterday, right? My go-to example is the ad industry, right? The commercial industry. Do I really need to spend another 30 seconds knowing how much I'm loving it? What benefit is that to my life or your life? Do I need to eat some more McDonald's? How does that improve my life? How does that improve anyone's life? That commercial? It doesn't. It helps out the economic system in a way that... Right? But it's not a worthwhile role. No, it's dumb. It is a detriment, right? You could make an argument that it is a detriment, because what is the ads? What are they doing? They are studying psychology and try to manipulate people into buying certain things. Some of these things being very harmful to the individual. I know that's a little bit cherry picking and outside of the scope, but it's an example to point out that no, not everybody is playing a critical and worthwhile role. If we have a machine that can do the hoovering, why would a person do it? What makes it a critical and worthwhile role? If we can have a machine that does clean the toilets, why would a person need to do it? If that is a possibility, right? From my point of view, we want to replace humans' jobs with machines, and we want to take away the jobs that doesn't really help out, which are plenty. There are plenty of jobs that does not benefit society. But youth both work with meaning, no matter how unfulfilling the particular task may be. This is a lie. I've had a lot of jobs that did not fill me with meaning or fulfillment. No, I fucking hated every second of those pointless jobs. I just hated it. I became depressed, and it just sucked. And I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't do it. Because it just sucked, right? UBI would undermine all this. Work by definition would become optional. Yes. Yes, exactly. That is what I want. Optional work. And consumption would become an entitlement disconnected from production. That is not true. It's doing the same thing that this previous article did, right? They kind of assume that if you have UBI, I can afford everything. Right? That kind of implies that the motivation disappears. It doesn't. Right? A lot of people climb the ladder, right? They try to increase the amount of pay they get for their work, and they try to improve themselves to do better work and climb the ladder and get more and more money, right? That incentive would not disappear. And like the incentive to work would not disappear. Like at all. It's just those basic things. Food and shelter, right? And if you're not guaranteed food and shelter, right, that's... We're approaching ideas of slavery here, right? We want to force upon people to be afraid of getting food and shelter, and that's the motivation that we need. It's black and white viewing of the world, right? Releasing people from responsibility to support... And actually, right, there are work, right? There are work that has to be done, and people will just say, no, I'm not fucking doing that. Right? Because it's not worth it for them. And I would say, what does that imply? It implies that the work is not, the wage is not high enough, right? If it's supposed to be a free market, then the worker should be able to say, no, I'm not doing that. And the people who wants the work to be made have to match, right? There has to be a negotiation. Right? It's not one side deciding what the other side, and you just take what you are given, right? That is kind of how it works today, right? A lot of people are just happy to have a job, right? Just happy to have an income, and will bend over just to keep those things. Which is a very unfair balance. It's an imbalanced way to live, right? The freedom would be to, right, if we have to have people to clean toilets, then they should be paid what that job is worth, right? And if the worker says, well, this is not worth it, that's definitely, right, that's liberty to the worker saying that. And I think that's great. All right. Alright. Releasing people from any responsibilities to support themselves or their families represent the zenith of a hyper-individualistic culture. Yeah. Individualistic freedoms, yeah. The goal is to maximize freedom and satisfaction by minimizing obligation and constraint. Yeah. As the slogan of the moment proclaims, you do you. Yeah, exactly. Thanks. Somebody understanding. This is the first time someone has actually given a fair assessment of one of my arguments. Right. This should give pause to anyone who believes that the good life entails more, or that a free society requires its members. As Yuval Levin writes in his new book, The Fractured Republic, to commit ourselves to more than our own will and whim. It requires a commitment precisely to the formative social and cultural institutions that we have seen pulled apart from above and below in our age of fracture. Wait, what are we talking? Even if a UBI represents just one more slip in our culture's long downward slide, that is no argument in its favor. Only after halting the slide and regaining its footing can the culture hope to reclaim lost ground. Yeah, and this is just opinion, right? What is this lost ground? What is this slip to the downward? I disagree. For me, it is building a structure upwards, right? I have the complete opposite view of this thing, right? And something they kind of imply, right? And this is where it becomes nasty, right? Because if I understand this correctly, right? With the individualistic thing, right? They're saying that people will not care about the culture or the society. Because they only care about themselves. And that is just not true. That is... right? People who are like that, right? Then you're not talking about individualistic, the strength of the individual, the ethical and political democracy and economical well-being of the individual. That's not what you're talking about. Now you're talking about narcissism or psychopathy, right? Whatever you want to call it. People that don't care about other people. And narcissists are raised. And that is a separate issue. And I agree. I would agree if that is where we're going with this, right? That there is a problem in society about narcissism. I would say yes. There is a problem with narcissism. I would agree to that. But this, right? I see them as separate issues, right? I don't see the people who are on welfare. I don't see them as narcissistic. I don't like the example of a narcissist for me is someone who climbs to the top and just shits on everyone below themselves. That is the worst kind of narcissist, right? The best person to control a company is the narcissist or the psychopath, because they only care about the bottom line. They don't care about the people. Right? So that type of person, right, our society as it's structured, have a place for those people. And I would say, right, where we don't value, right, how do we create a narcissist? How is that created? Well, that is a society where the parents no longer care about their children. That is how we get narcissism, when parents who only care about themselves and don't care about the children. So what do we need? We need parents who take the time and effort to raise their children. If that is so valuable, right? If it is so valuable, then why the fuck don't parents get paid for being parents? Why don't they get, I don't know, some way of just earning money? One way of getting money just to, I don't know how that would look like, some way of just paying people to spend time with their children and do the housework and raising children, right? What is a possible way to do that? See my point? Yeah. Right. But UBI proponents themselves recognize the radical nature of the shift they suggest. Yes, it is a radical shift, indeed. Writing at the leftist website, Jacobin Shannon Ikebe observed that a UBI has been embraced in particular by the post-productive left, which carries a strong feminist and ecological bent and rejects the traditional left's valorization of labor and the working class. Sure, I don't know why it's feminist. Ikebe quoted other scholars describing universal basic income as capitalist road to communism and a post-work political project. Yeah, I mean, it is a capitalist system, right? UBI. In communism, it's like, I recently read the Communist Manifesto, and the Communist Manifesto is just dumb, right? But the core idea is lifting up the worker, right? The working class, the lowest of the low in society. They are treated horribly from a certain perspective, and that's why the communists is all pissed off about. And UBI is a way to increase the political power, the economical power, the freedoms of the working class. It is one route to do that. And it seems like the argument this text is doing, right, is just they don't want to lift up the working class. That is the only thing I see, right? It's an opinion that, oh, I don't want the best for the working class. Is that really it? Alright. One key factor for the push for UBI, I think, is the idea that it could help reorder social expectations. Sure, yeah. At the moment, we are all defined by work. Western society generally, but especially American society, keeps social score according to what people do and how much they make for it. The dreamiest proponents of UBI see that changing as work goes away. I mean, I am a proponent of not valuing everything with money. Maybe it is possible, but not as it stands today, right? The money value system does not work for stuff that I value. For example, parenthood. I think parenthood is one of the most important jobs that exists in a society, like looking to the future. But no one gets paid for being a parent. But homemaking, I think that is valuable, but it doesn't generate any money. And I see that as a problem with the current economical system. There are a lot of stuff that people do that I see a lot of value in, but it's not monetizable, right? You don't get any money for it, but it still has a lot of value. That doesn't mean I want to make anything go away, right? Social score for making a lot of money. I think that's fine, alright? Doing a good job, doing work, and being rewarded for said work, I think that is great, right? That is a good thing. Get rewarded for your work. I mean, I don't see work as an idea disappearing anytime soon, but I think it's a worthwhile effort to try to structure society in a way where that is a goal, right? Work oftentimes sucks, oftentimes is boring, and try to get rid of that is a worthwhile goal. Yeah. Right. Manju's comment illustrates how support for UBI fits neatly alongside the widely held belief that technological advancements will make work go away. I don't see that happening anyway soon, but it reduces the need for work, right? That has already happened, right? Like I said before, a lot of work today does not really benefit society in any meaningful way. And I would love to have that argument. But there is so many places where it's just jobs are good and everybody loves work for the sake of work, right? They just imply that it's a good thing, but they don't argue that it is. And I would want to see those arguments, but so far, no one has really showed it to me. Alright. But when prior technological revolutions made a larger share of farm than factory labor obsolete, people continued to find new and productive vocations. That's not necessarily 100% true. Sure, we will find new and productive vocations, sure. But we might not have to. More than 4 in 5 employees now work in the service sector. Alright, what are these? What are these services? Are all of them great? What about automating restaurants and not having service? Right? What about having UBI, and because you have UBI, you can spend less time at your work and then you can cook your own food, right? We can reduce the workday with 2 hours. In those 2 hours you spend time just cooking for yourself. Productive time. And then we can get rid of restaurants. And servers. Waiters. Right? If you want to cook for someone, like if that's something that gives you joy and meaning in life, then you don't have to cook for strangers for money. Well, I suppose you could if you wanted to as well. Right? If someone wants to, that is great. Right? But then we have to look at the motivation, right? What is the motivation, right? When I order a pizza and eat that pizza, like if we ask the people working at the pizza joint, and we ask them, right, would you give me these pizza for free, right? If you got the money, right? If you just had all the money and didn't have to work, would you still be motivated to give me pizza? Or is the motivation money, right? And if the motivation is money, then I think it's a worthwhile effort to reduce the amount of work that person has to do. I mean, pizza is great and I love pizza. I love the pizza joint nearby. But if I could get the same pizza made by a machine and not have people make it for me, that is the goal I would have. If they would be happier without making pizza day in and day out. And maybe, right, if you're happy, right, if your motivation is actually you like to cook for people, then why not cook for friends and family? That would be way more fulfilling, right? That would be a social productive vocation that did not generate any money. Cooking for friends and family. You could do that, right? That doesn't generate money, it generates good feelings and social cohesion and all that good stuff, right? But you might not, right? You might not monetize it, right? It's not as monetizable then. And I think that is the future I want to see, where the pizza baker makes it for their friends and families, rather than strangers for money. Or if they like to make it for strangers for money, that is fine too, right? That is fine too, but what I want to see is people not feeling forced into it, but they do it for their own enjoyment. They get to be their own boss, right? If you just want to do it for lunch, right? Maybe you just want to make pizza from 11 to 2 o'clock, right? And that's your work day. I think that should be fine, right? I think that would be great if that is how much you want to work for money, right? It's both you're happy about making pizza and you also get the money so you can buy the cool stuff that you are incentivized to buy in our current society, in our current system, right? The incentive to work does not disappear. The present technological revolution shows no sign of following a different course. It does. If you look at all the pointless jobs that are created, like the 4 out of 5 employees doing jobs that might not benefit society a lot, right? Cooking food, 8 hours a day. Right. The US labor market has kept pace with the population growth, adding 80 million net jobs since computers started coming to the scene in the 60s and more than 25 million since the internet became mainstream in the 1990s. Yeah, and how many of these jobs are actually good for society, right? When you actually look into them and, right, for human well-being, from a psychological standpoint, how many of these jobs are pointless? A lot of them are pointless. Not all, maybe not even a majority, but a lot of them are. And we could argue individual jobs. I would love to give like examples and like cherry picking examples over and over and over. Just try all the jobs. But that would take a lot of time. I have an idea that a lot of them are just pointless. Right. Approximately 60% of the working age population remains employed, slightly above the post-war average. And that's terrible, right? I want to see this number lowered. Pisses me off that, right? In my country, all the politicians have this implicit, dumb idea that work is good. Jobs are good. We want more jobs. And when I look at our species, like when I look at all the technological creation that we do and all the what's that called, all the innovations, right? All the stuff that we do, right? All the inventions, not all of them, but most of them are there just to reduce the amount of menial labor, boring stuff that we don't want to do, right? We took horses and put a plow on them to make them plow more ground faster because One view of it is because we don't want to do it, right? We have the horses do it for us. Then we have the tractors because we don't want to plow them themselves. And then we have automated tractors because we don't even want to control we don't want to sit in the tractor and drive around. But that is the trend of humanity. We don't want to work. There is a lot of stuff that has to be done for human fulfillment. Slow, right? There is a lot of stuff. Take this with a grain of salt, but right, there are some stuff, right, that has to we just have to do it. But we would prefer not to, right? We prefer being up here, and here, and here. Right? That is the preference. We don't prefer doing this stuff. We prefer being up here. In general, right? Oh, I didn't read this. Did I? I don't think this is a bad thing necessarily. Wait, did I leave this behind? Yeah, Brittany Hunter. I did not like this. This one, I do kind of. It's still doing that thing, right? It's a misunderstanding of how humanity works, I feel, yeah. The system needs a lot of jobs, right? Because the system needs to distribute money to everybody, because everybody needs purchasing power for food and shelter, right? So that is why we need all these jobs. The reason why we need the jobs is because people needs money. Right? And if we can just give people money without the jobs, then we don't need the jobs anymore. Well, we do, of course, need jobs, but you get my point, right? It's like a skewed view on reality that does not have humanity's best interest at heart, right? It has the system's best interest at heart. And it's like they forget that money and the system is just there. It's a tool for us to organize. And they just want to reject the idea of it is possible to make improvements for the actual cause of the system, right? But we can ask that. What is the reason that we organize ourselves in these big, like humans? Why do we organize ourselves in bigger and bigger communities and societies? Because when we cooperate, we become more powerful. We can do more stuff. Right? 10 people working together as a group can achieve way more stuff than 10 individual people. Right? If I become an expert at building houses, you become an expert at hunting, then you can live in the house I built and I can eat the food you hunted. And we become more efficient. Right? And we can create more stuff for ourselves. We can make lives easier for ourselves. And that's the whole point, right? That's the whole point of society. What other, if society does not make me happier, well, not necessarily happier, more content, improve my quality of life. If society reduce the quality of life of the people, then what is the point? There is no point. What about poverty? Proponents say that UBI would end it because each American would receive a check lifting him above the poverty line. No, we would just change the poverty line, right? In the current system, right, there will be haves and have-nots. It's a scale, right? How much money do you gain? Less or more? Just lifting this. That is one way we're doing. A safety net, yeah. But poverty is not only or even primarily a matter of material well-being. Is it not? What the fuck are you talking about? If it were, the 20,000 in safety net spending per person below the poverty line, the presence of air conditioning and cable television and cell phones in the majority of such households, even obesity epidemic ravaging low-income communities would all be signs that the war on poverty is nearly won. Yeah, poverty, right? Poverty is just a scale. We look at the poorest people in society, right? And there are people that are the poorest people in the country. There will, right, unless you have some magical system where money is no longer a thing, right? Without money, poverty is no longer a thing, right? If everybody just has access to everything, which I suppose is hopefully the future for humankind, we're nowhere near there yet, right? So there's probably gonna be like a class difference. So the war on poverty, which is a dumb thing. Why war? Right? Those poor people, why are we waging war on them?
You know why they put oxygen masks on planes?
Deep breaths.
So you can breathe. Oxygen gets you high.
Alright, but we care about social as well as material conditions, and we care about upward mobility. By these measures, UBI makes things worse. Wait, what? How? How does it make things worse? Alright. If we give you UBI, we give you the freedom, right? We don't have, like, currently, like they said before, right? They have a lot of opinions and restrictions and force. You have to do this and that and that. Right? There's a lot of stuff that comes with the current system for the poorest people, right? They have to do a lot of stuff. And all that stuff fucks up upward mobility, right? It fucks up social, right? Because we look down, right? In the current system, right? With this person, right? You look down upon people at the bottom, right? These people, you look at them as leechers. Society look at these people as leechers. A leech on society, right? We have to take extra steps to take care of these people. These feeders, the objectivist view, right? If we just have UBI, right, that is one shift that I want to see. Not to look at them as social, right? I think it should be fine for someone to sit at home and play video games all day. I don't believe that would be a majority of the people for a long stretch of time. I've been that person, right? I've been that person just sitting on my ass for a year, not just not doing anything. And it's not all that. Yeah. It doesn't, it's not a great life, and it does motivate me to do other more productive stuff with my life. I don't know if that is true for everyone, right? Some people might be happy just sitting on their ass and play video games all day. Why not let them? I think that's a minority, right? As long as civilization doesn't collapse, and I don't think it will, right? Yeah. But UBI, again, right? I've said that before. It's destabilizing, and be careful about it, right? It's not arguments against it, yeah. Makes things worse. Upward mobility, I disagree. I completely disagree that it makes these things worse. The greatest crisis facing less educated and lower income Americans is social, not economic. Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. Oh, money doesn't give you happiness, says the person that has never starved or lived paycheck to paycheck, not knowing if they will afford food the next week, being completely dependent on the well wishes of the person that you have to go and ask for money. Like these two are completely separate. I would agree that there are social issues, but this, giving them UBI, it takes them away from the dependency of having to ask for it, right? Having to beg for the money, right? Instead, you just get it for free. So I completely disagree with with where they're going with this. Right, documents in harrowing detail measures of social health that looked roughly equal across economic classes now show gaping disparities, from family formation to employment to civic engagement to basic levels of trust. Yeah. What is one way to start trusting the government? The government saying that I will take care of you no matter what. That is increasing trust, right? You do you, we'll take care of you no matter what happens. You'll have home, you'll have shelter, you'll have food. That's a way of increasing trust, right? Thinking otherwise is dumb, right? Alright, both parents. 90% of the lower class figure had declined to barely 30%. I don't know. The greatest crisis... Alright, it's the same thing again. Appreciating the status of work in these communities is critical to understanding their decline. Work gives not only meaning but also structure and stability to life, right? Here we go again. Someone at the top telling everybody at the bottom how they should live their lives. That is such a dick move. I know what's best for you and how you should live your life. You have to fight. You need to be incentivized. You need to be incentivized to not starve and find shelter, right? You need that motivation. You need it. Because that grants you stability in life. That grants you structure in your life. Oh man, this is so gross. This is so gross. Fuck you, and I'm not gonna read the rest. I'm too pissed and it's lunchtime. Fuck the rest. They're all fucking assholes writing this stuff. Why couldn't they just give proper arguments? No. I know the best. How you should, like, I should decide for you how you should live your life. That is literally what they said, right? I know best. Fuck you. I understand why the communists are so pissed at the bourgeoisie and that attitude. When you have to struggle with this kind of attitude, it's like, yeah, just fuck you. Alright, not you who are listening or watching this. Yeah. Not fuck you. I would love to hear your comments. But thanks for hanging out and yeah, have a good one. See you next time. Cheers.